everybody. Well, I want to thank Jesse and Elaine and everyone who is volunteering for Layers for having me here. Super excited to be here in this wonderful community. So I'm going to get started by asking you a question. Think about the very first time you ever thought about ethics, like you consciously realized it was a thing. So for me, it happened when I was 4, which is admittedly a little bit late to the game, but better late than never. So I was 4 years old, and I was rushing to the dinner table, ready to feast. My dad asked me if I had washed my hands. And like any other 4-year-old who is too cool for hygiene, I lied, and I said, yeah. And they saw right through it. My parents were like, you lied, and I got in trouble, big time. And that was when I realized that, okay, so I can't go through life being this adorable little kid forever and never doing anything wrong. Like, there's actually good and bad. And it sucks, but that's the fact of life. So with that, my fixation on ethics and what is good and what is bad carried on. And in some ways, I would say that growing up and maturing and becoming more of an adult is our continual process of calibrating our values and our actions to become more ethical people. At least that's the goal. That's what we aim for. And that brings me here today. So my name is Zhou, and I am a designer at IBM, where I have the privilege of working with an awesome team designing cybersecurity products, and also with another team in which we try to bring ethics into enterprise design, especially in relation to artificial intelligence. I also am the creator of Design Ethically, which is a project that I've been working on for quite a while, and it's basically a framework and a toolkit that teams all over can use if they want to bring ethics into their processes. And last but not least, I'm an activist. Yes, I was that annoying kid on campus who always was protesting something, and nowadays my community organizing takes place in a weird little city that I call home, Austin, Texas. So, why ethics? And why ethics in tech? Now, most of you might know this answer, and we've been hearing a lot about it in the press over the last few years. Ironically, the tech industry got its first wake-up call to ethics, kind of like how I did. We both got into trouble. And that's not to say that Silicon Valley wasn't thinking about ethics 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, because there were people. But it was really, really recently, with that onslaught of media attention, that we started opening our eyes and realizing, okay, we really got to do something about this. Because the fact of the matter is, our whole ethos of moving fast and breaking all the things has brought us pretty far, but it's also shown us that there are some problems that we have to look out for. So this picture is a screenshot from an artificial intelligence facial recognition software that is being built by a Chinese company and is intended to be leveraged by the Chinese government for surveillance. And I went back to China last September, and let me tell you, Big Brother is watching you, all of you. And it's quite scary. And interestingly enough, San Francisco just recently banned the use of this kind of technology for police agencies. But the point is, regardless of who's using it and who's not using it and who's building it and who's not building it, we are at a point where we have unprecedented power today. We really do. And what's sobering is that we don't really have a way to effectively regulate it yet. So during the time of this picture, I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was a designer for the Air Force, working in the Pentagon, and let me tell you, all eyes were on this hearing, this Facebook hearing. And interestingly enough, although as egregious as Facebook's actions were, the talk of the town wasn't so much on Facebook as it was on the senators that were cross-examining him and how little they seemed to know about the tech industry. Now, this did not actually happen. I want to qualify that. This is a very well-crafted tweet. But if you watch the hearing, it kind of seemed like it could have happened. And I'm not trying to poo-poo on our senators or representatives. And I want to say that, if you don't work in tech, it can be really hard to figure out what the heck is going on in our industry. That's true. Like, I told my parents that I was designing for IBM security, and they thought that I was a security guard for like 2 weeks. I'm not. But what goes to say is that our industry, our tech industry, is not just the tech industry anymore. We're now education tech, we're med tech, we're agriculture tech, we're transportation tech. We've snuck in the back door to all of these other industries that have existed for way longer and have already established their own ethical guidelines and codes of conduct. And now we're the new kid on the block and we're like, hey, we're here to disrupt everything. And people understandably don't know how to regulate us. So that means some of the onus is on us as designers, as developers, as folks that are building these products from the ground up. we have to start being cognizant about the effects that our products are having. So, how on earth do we apply ethics to what we do? Well, it helps to first figure out what the heck ethics is, and I touched on this briefly in the beginning. So ethics is fundamentally trying to understand what is good, what is bad, what's both, and what's neither. And you have to remember that what is ethical does not necessarily mean that it's legal or it was legal in the past. There are plenty of things that used to be legal that are still legal that are not okay today and not okay to do. Also, it's tricky because ethics can really depend on your framework and where you're coming from. So it can be dependent on factors like your upbringing, your culture, your religion, etc. And so, for example, someone might think that this puppy is really, really bad for chewing the toy's face off. I, on the other hand, don't think so at all, because I think puppies are adorable. And it just goes to show that there's a lot of perspectives in the room. So one way to kind of even it out is to establish common values or principles. And I like to start out with 3 core principles or values to have a sharing place to really understand where we're all going. And the first one is autonomy. So this is super important. Autonomy is allowing your users to feel like they are in control of the product and not the other way around. You know, my best friend just texted me 2 days ago, and she was like in all caps with a lot of emojis, and she was like, I just finally figured out how to unsubscribe from this app that I've been paying $5 per month for the last 3 years. And I was like, when was the last time you used this product? 3 years ago. So, and it just goes to show, she was going through this whole process of doing it, and it was a lot of steps. It was super complicated, and that's, in one sense, dark pattern design. So designing things to make them super complicated for the user, it's not helping anyone. It's definitely not making your users happy. Don't do it. And it's hampering their autonomy. Another thing is transparency. This is super, super important. Yeah. Love it. So transparency basically means that the users get to know what they're signing up for when they're signing up for it. And transparency is so critical. Transparency is when I, as a user, create a Gmail account, that I can know who's accessing my data. Transparency means that if I hire a third-party company to design an AI recruiting software for me, that there is a sufficient level of explainability so that I understand how it works. Transparency means that if I am an Uber or a Lyft driver, that I know from the app how much I'm getting paid and what the breakdown is and if it's changing and why it's changing. Last but not least, safety. Safety is crucial. And this is not just physical safety, this is also emotional safety. And emotional safety includes things like inclusivity and the sense of emotional health and mental health. So an example of safety would be like if I were to use Airbnb, I should be able to use this product without being able to feel like there are any racist actions that are committed against me, which is something that happens time and time again on the platform, especially towards Black and brown users. Safety means that if I'm using Facebook or Instagram, I can use these apps and know that I'm not being emotionally manipulated just because some team in the back is trying to run emotional contagion studies. Safety means that when I sign up for a WordPress account or any other kind of account, I know that my personal information is being kept safe and secure. So, with all of these different values, there's one thing in common, and that's choice. We are giving our users choice to enable their autonomy. We are providing users transparency so that they can make smart choices. And we are ensuring that users are safe in spite of the choices that they or other folks might make. And this reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by author, activist, and feminist Bell Hooks, who said, being oppressed means the absence of choices. And she was talking about the institutional barriers that have been set up in society that prevent women, and especially Black women, from advancing. And you might be asking, well, what does this have to do with my product or my app? Maybe more than you think. So when I say designers ought to be giving choices to their users, I'm not saying we give all the choices in the world. Like when I log into Facebook, I'm not trying to choose if the logo is blue or green or purple. I don't care. But I would like to have a choice in whether or not I see targeted ads that are based on my ethnic affinity, which is something that actually did happen. And it's incredibly racist and also very unconstitutional and unethical. So as designers, we have to keep those things in mind, because are our products perpetuating systemic inequalities? Or are they trying to fix for them and recognizing that they are a thing and preventing them from happening? So throughout the course of history, there have been a lot of different explorations into schools of thought for how to live your most ethical life. And if you've taken any kind of philosophy 101 class or any kind of ethics class in any Western institution, you'll learn about a couple of schools of thought that were developed by really old white dudes that are no longer alive. And deontology is one of them. So deontology is a school of thought that is based on your intent, your motivation. You do things because you've got a duty to do them. And this one is really, really famous one. Don't let the word intimidate you. That's really what it means, intent-based. And the second one that I think stands out to me is consequentialism, otherwise known as utilitarianism. So this basically means that you do things for the impact, the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. And it's very much results-based. So how do these two schools of thought really apply to design and what we do? Well, if you take out the intent and the results paradigm that you see in those two schools of thought, I think it really does apply to what we do. Aren't we all asking ourselves these questions? One, on the intent side, is the problem a worthy problem to address? And two, on the results side, what consequences does the solution have, right? And if you look at examples of this, you might see like, okay, should we be building a censored search engine for users in China? I don't know. And on the results side, if we do that, what happens, right? So what if we masked this on top of our design process? So you might recognize this design process right here. And it's a pretty common one developed by the Stanford D School. Most companies have their own versions of it. And I put it on top of this intent and results paradigm. So you'll see on the intent side, you've got empathize, which is understanding your users and then defining their problems, and then pivoting over to the results side, ideating for solutions, prototyping them out, and then testing them to validate them, which is great. This is tried and true, it works, and it delivers. But I wonder, though, if there's room for it to become, or to ask more questions about the ethics of your product. And so in that case, what if you added some more steps, yay, more work for everyone, and added a couple new steps, such as, one, evaluating. So after you've defined your problems, evaluating them to see, okay, is this problem worth solving in the first place? And then after you ideated on those problems, then forecasting. Now this is my favorite one. Forecasting is essentially, okay, examining, can any ethical violations happen if we implement this product? And it sounds a lot harder than it actually is, and I'm willing to bet that every one of you has done forecasting at some point in your life. So I'm hoping that I'm not the only one who's been watching Game of Thrones for the last decade or so. And you might be like me and my team, and we have a whole freaking Slack channel dedicated to guessing what was going to happen in the last season. So some of us happened to be really, really wrong, and we totally missed the mark and had no idea that the season would be as bad as it was. But some of us were really, really close. We were super close, and that's forecasting. It's using the things that your own instinctive toolkit, your intuition, drawing from fields like behavioral economics and psychology and ethnography to try to predict how users are going to interact with your product, and then designing around that. And then after that, you can prototype them out, test it, ship out the product, and finally, monitoring. It's really easy as designers to, move on to the next great thing after we've shipped out a product, but no, we've got to come back to it and just double check. Are there any new problems that are coming up? And if so, what are they, and how can we design around them? So there's a lot of exercises for evaluating, forecasting, monitoring on our website, designethically.com, but I'm not here to talk about them right now. That's for a workshop or something. I'm here to ask a bigger question, which is, what now, right? We've got so many different teams out there who are starting to bring in ethics into their processes and whatnot, but what now? Like, what's the bigger thing that we can do, and how can we actually enact really meaningful change? So when thinking about this, I turned back to look at other industries that have done this, created change in their own respective fields. And there seems to be one common denominator, and that's activism, which is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And at times when you're thinking about, okay, where our industry is heading, it can be really daunting. And it's like, wow, are we ever going to, reverse this ship and make it go the right way? I'm optimistic. I really am. And I'm optimistic because I see things like this. Some of you might have been in this picture, who knows? But this was from last November at the Google Walkouts protest in San Francisco, and all around the world, too. And this gives me hope. And things like this remind me of this quote that I said earlier on in the presentation when I was talking about AI, facial recognition software in China. But it's that we have unprecedented power today. in us. We have new ways to organize. We have new ways to gain awareness. We have new ways to collaborate and to really speak out what we need to say. And that is incredibly powerful. And as designers, it's our duty to leverage that power and to leverage our privilege to use it for good. So, how on earth do we take all of that and use it to scale and mature design ethics? And yes, it's a movement, because I think it needs to be, and I'm hoping that it can really turn the tide. So I want to make a really clear point that the design ethics movement is not just some lonely chief ethicist sitting up in their ivory tower, nor is it some group of Twitter thought leaders. No, none of that. Design ethics is grassroots. It's for everyone. It's for you, it's for me, it's for people who are actually working, building out these products from the ground up. And that is incredibly important to realize. So as a designer, what can you do? There's a couple things you can do to scale and mature design ethics within yourself. One is to learn and unlearn. Learn about ethics, learn about social injustices, learn about what's happening in this world, and learn about people that don't look like you, because you're going to be designing for them, whether you like it or not. Also, unlearn your biases. We all have them. That's human nature. But if you can pinpoint them and recognize what they are, then you can counteract against them, and that's incredibly important. Another thing you can do is to define your own values. What matters to you? What is significant to you? And does the work that you're doing right now, does it align with your values? And if not, how can you make it align? Because that will give you courage and strength, and that will allow you to be okay with saying no. There are going to be times in your career when you're going to have to stomp your foot down and be like, I can't do this. And it's up to you to have that resilience, to find that resilience within yourself. What can you do as a company? Well, you can start off by upskilling your workforce. That's a twofold step. That means not only bringing in new folks that understand ethics and understand these types of concepts, but also training your current employees. And that's what we're doing at IBM. Actually, we're rolling out this new website this week. It's going to be a course for all designers and developers at our company, as well as outside, that teaches them AI ethics, so covering topics like compliance and explainability and biases. Also, submitting your teams to regular audits. The earlier and the more frequent, the better. You want to be told that your product sucks from the very beginning, rather than being told after you've spent all that money and time on it. And then you can correct your course and make it better. And finally, granting amnesty to your workers. Now, this is a bit of a contentious one, but I really stand by it, and I think that it's important that if you have a company and you've created this atmosphere where your workers feel safe enough to speak up and say, hey, this feature might be problematic, that you should honor that and you should listen to them instead of retaliating and pushing them down. And finally, as an industry, what can we do? Well, first of all, we can ensure that schools and design programs and engineering programs and whatnot teach ethics and teach social justice and really give that kind of education and grounding to everyone who's in the industry, because it really matters. Also, we can completely overhaul the metrics that we use to gauge our performances, right? We're in this kind of exciting new era of growth hacking and growth design, which is cool, but you also have to realize that we've taken these proxies for user happiness and user engagement and turned them into what we think is the actual thing we should be chasing after. So proxies like user retention and engagement that don't really necessarily speak to what's actually happening. They can be very misleading. For example, one of the products with the highest retention rates, it's not Facebook, it's Tinder, not Spotify, it's actually cigarettes. And I've never smoked a cigarette myself, but I'm betting that it's not because it's the best frickin' user experience in the world. It might be because it's been designed to be addicting. So just being wary of those things as we progress as an industry. Finally, fixing our pipeline for diversity and for inclusion. This is a really, really important one. It's really near and dear to my heart, and I think that it's something that we have to continually push for and continually advocate for, because if you have a homogeneous team, you're going to design a homogeneous experience, and the world is not homogeneous at all. So we really have to be on top of this. We've got to start hiring and promoting folks of color, LGBTQ folks, and everyone, because this is incredibly important. So this is kind of like how I feel about this whole design ethics movement, in that it's really, really hard. It really is. But it's incredibly worth it. It's worth it for the kids that are using our apps. It's worth it for the women that are using our apps. It's worth it for the people of color that are using our apps. It's worth it for the LGBTQ folks that are using our apps. By the way, happy Pride, y'all. It's worth it for everyone. And that is so, so important to bring back to you and to have that internalized within yourself, because at the end of the day, nobody is neutral, and doing nothing is not neutral. Doing nothing is complicity, and there's one thing that we can do is to speak up, so we should make use of that. So, with that, if you would like to check out any exercises, you can feel free to access them at designethically.com. They're all free and they're open for everyone. If you have any feedback, we love feedback, so leave us some feedback. And we also have a Twitter account at @ethicallydesign. We couldn't get Design Ethically because someone else took that 10 years ago. But yes, feel free to check those out. And last but not least, I want to leave you with some homework and one last dog image, because I freaking love dogs. So I want you to go back, and after you leave Layers, to think about your own ethical journey, your own wake-up calls. Maybe you got in trouble once because you didn't wash your hands. I don't know. But what was your wake-up call? And what are your values, right? And to think about that and take that back to your team. Thank you all.